Yeah, what's good, Joe? It's your man, the Bigga P, and I'm here with my thoughts from last night's Showtime card from DC. I'll probably make it a little brief because it's Easter. First of all, happy Easter to everyone. If you don't celebrate it, it is what it is. Happy Easter, anyways. But yeah, we're gonna get going. Just do a quick recap of the fights. The first fight was Peter Quillin defending his WBO middleweight title against Lucas Kachevny. Nothing much you can say about this. Lucas Kachevny, although I have to admit, though, it does take a lot of discipline to stay in a tight guard for almost 12 rounds and barely raising your head to throw punches. And the funny thing was, he's actually, when he actually got him into the ropes, he was, actually catching Quillen. But the problem was, I think Quillen was just a little bit too big for him. Um, why Quillen, he had his moments. I mean, wasn't any doubt that for 1 to 12 that he was actually in control of the fight. He landed the harder shots. It was a pretty dull fight. More or less, Quillen realized that although he could hit him at not at will, but enough to actually get him to back off. He wasn't really stepping on the gas to actually put him away. Um, so I mean, listen, Kachevny, he put up a game effort, but like I said, I think it was just either too worn out or too small a fighter to really do anything to Quillen. Um, but in terms of what Quillen's interview after the fight was pretty much hilarious because he was trying to call out Martinez or Triple G or any of them. Now, as we all know, um, Quillen is the outlier at 160. Basically, he's the outlier at Showtime. Pretty much all the good middleweight action is on HBO, right as of right now. Um, I'm not like I said, Quillen. I mean, although yes, he does have some power, he didn't really impress me because I really expected him to actually do a little bit more than go the distance with Kachevny. Um, and I think, I hope he thinks his lucky star that that none of the other 160 champs are around to face him because I have a feeling as soon as Quillen faces a middle who's an actual middle who's actually bigger than he is, we'll probably see a repeat of the Rosado fight. Except I don't think except Quillen won't escape with his title at all. That is for damn sure. um, the next fight, Sean Porter making his first defense of the IBF welterweight title against Paulie Malignaggi. Um, in the previous weeks to come, first history. I've never been a big Sean Porter fan. I've never been a fan at all. I've always found him flawed, very fundamentally flawed. Um, and even in no fight, I guess that proved me, convinced me that I was right. Than the first fight with Julio Diaz. Julio Diaz, is, of course, is a fighter that everyone knows. A little bit of a glass jaw, and arguably he lost the fight. I personally think Porter lost that fight, but since that fight, I mean, he did rematch him and he beat him a lot clearly, and then he went after Devin. Again, Devin's not a person I'm not high on either, but I thought Devin's boxing skills overall would give Porter his first L. Imagine my surprise that turned out not to be the case. So, with that being said, we take us to Paulie Malignaggi. Um, this was, I mean, this fight I had no doubts that Porter would body Paulie. I was saying it in the forums I went out for weeks ahead that Porter was gonna get into Paulie's ass, and this was not gonna be a close fight. This was gonna be a beatdown. For a couple of reasons, because Porter is not a natural welter. I mean, he's fought as high as super middle, and he's boiled down. So where he lacks with the boxing skills, he's pretty big and he's strong at that weight. He's not the hardest puncher at the weight, but he has the advantage of not being a natural welter that actually works to his advantage. Um, and I saw absolutely nothing with this Paulie. This Paulie right now is fading. Um, doesn't have welter power. Doesn't have still has the bad hands. Like there was no way that I saw anything that Paulie had at this point that would actually be able to stop him, other than unless he was sticking and moving for 12 rounds, or was able to cut him, or was gonna make Porter respect his power, which was not going to happen. So it was interesting. When the of course first started, I think probably within a minute, Porter manages to cut Paulie. Now I think it looked like a jab, or it may have been a wrapping, but whatever it was, blood was showing, and it got to the point where I think Paulie knew immediately early that he was going to be overwhelmed. So Paulie tried. He was trying to throw some conviction in those right hands, because usually, a right hand a conviction from right from Paulie is rare. I mean, he was really trying to slug it out and stop him that way, and that wasn't going to work. Porter ate those shots like it was nothing, and just absolutely just mauled him, just blasted him with combinations, put him down once. Um, Paulie got up and just absolutely got annihilated on the ropes. Like it was bad. I never thought I would actually. But Paulie Malinger is a tough guy. I mean, it takes a lot to actually stop him. Um, the two times he was stopped, he was stopped late in the fight, like really late in the fight. And Porter just absolutely ran right through him, and like I really thought Porter was 6 here, because when he was lying on there underneath the bottom rope, it was like, oh my god, he's hurt, he's like seriously hurt, and in this fight, it proved the point, it proved the purpose, to make Sean Porter look good against a name at 147. So with that being said, I think Porter now is probably looking at facing Kell Brook, and Kell Brook is a fighter who doesn't have much of an inside game either. So I would probably expect to see more of the same. But I have to admit that was a good solid win by Sean Porter as he continues on as welterweight champion. As for Paulie, I just think that now Showtime really put the final close on his career as a top contender. I mean, Paulie can fight on, but unless he faces another top fighter and causes another upset, he's pretty much done as a top contender at 147, and we're probably now maybe looking at the end of his career overall. I mean, it was kind of sad, his interview, like he was fighting back tears, and I mean, and Paulie's like the rest of us. I mean, none of us really think Porter is that good to go, and he is. I mean, Porter is a very fundamentally unsound fighter, very unsound, but his strengths are making up for it for the time being, and especially against someone like Paulie, who doesn't have the speed he used to have, and that's had no power to boot. And it was written, but it was just sad watching his interview, and I mean knowing that he is probably facing the end of his career or near the end of his career. Um, but look at it this way. I mean, Paulie's a very articulate guy. He knows the sport, so there's always the Showtime gig, the broadcasting gig, which he's been excelling at. So, you get to see. And then, of course, later on during the battles on Twitter, and I found out that he was sent to the hospital, stretchered with oxygen, sent to the hospital. And I just came back from church, so I have not read any more updates on that situation. So, I mean, hopefully, I think they just took him for, just for precaution. And that's perfectly fine. We all want to just make sure that rule nothing out, that nothing is actually wrong. So hopefully, Paulie, will recover from this fight, and there's no serious damage. The last fight, the main event, was Bernard Hopkins versus Beibut Shumenov in IBF WBA light heavyweight title unification. Bernard keeps showing everyone, of course, at the age of 49, why he's a true great in the sport, and it was more of B-Hop doing his thing than Shumenov, who reportedly didn't even have a trainer in this corner, which absolutely is mind-boggling to me. Why would you, on a big fight like this, not have? Excuse me. Why would you not have a trainer in your corner? And a trainer is like, I mean, Bernard Hopkins is an old man. He's not what he used to be. He's cagey though, yes. But if you're going into a fight with him and you don't even have a trainer in your corner, how are you supposed to win? And I wish I knew that too, because I was actually picking Shumenov to actually maybe score maybe a minor upset. But pretty much, B-Hop schooled him. Like the lead writes, Shumenov, you know, yeah, and saying Shumenov is the younger man, and he should have been more active. I don't know what he thought he was doing, fighting down the Bernard's level, but he should have been a lot more active than he should have. And of course, I mean, people will say, "Oh, it's easier said than done," but in this case, it still should have been done regardless. Shumenov let Hopkins dictate the pace of the bout, laid in the lead right hands, and then the 11th round actually caught him with an absolute corker of a right hand that sent Shumenov down on his knee and then touching the canvas with his right glove, and that's where the fight was won to me. And it, but the thing about this fight that annoyed me a little bit was the judging. The second judge that actually saw fit to actually give the fight to Shumenov 114-113. This is with a 10-8 round. I want to see the card and I want to see what he was doing and how many 10-10 rounds he must have been scoring to turn in a card like that when it was a clear Hopkins victory. And I really want to see the card. Hopefully that card gets revealed if I go on Boxing Scene or whatever where I go to, and someone someone posts that card, because I want to see what he did, and I want, if that's the case, and I want him to probably never judge a fight again. And it's probably see fit because I think the other two judges I actually, of course, I knew of, but he was the only one I'd never heard of before, and looks like I'll probably hopefully never hear of again. So Shumenov, of course, I was a little disappointed at that because I think Shumenov is a lot better fighter than it is. Outside of the Campillo fights, but that's a whole nother argument altogether. Um, but I was just overly just disappointed at how stiff. Well, I mean, he fights always stiff, but it's just he usually applies a good amount of volume, and there was just none of that to be had. Um, as for B Hop, he continues, he does his thing, and most likely now with Stevenson going to Showtime, that's the next big fight at 175. As Stevenson is the man at 175 right now, and provided of course Stevenson gets past his title defense against was it Fanfara or whatever. Um, so yeah, we'll probably see that fight in the fall. So yeah, overall it was decent. It was an entertaining card, and Showtime hopefully continue to turn out a little bit more entertaining cards in the near future. I believe there's one next week. I forgot who was actually fighting, but yep. Until next week. All right, peace.